There are some days where the job gets tough.
Well, I've lost all my hair, that's for sure. I'm actually inspired by the newcomers that I see because I think they are here for the right reasons. I think they understand that the Raleigh area is a place that you can try new things, and it is made up of these smart people, well educated. We're building a better Raleigh. We're building a better community. We're doing it for well-being purposes.
Raleigh's always been a city that was a diamond in the rough, but short-sighted leaders kept us in neutral for a real long time. Raleigh's made up of so much more than just athletes and farmers and churchgoers. We're musicians, we're writers, we're filmmakers, we're app designers, we're even technological and health pioneers in this city. But as leadership changed, so did the city. And suddenly citizens were broken free of the limited vision from our leaders. We were able to finally start spreading our wings. And then the whole country noticed. And suddenly we had this flood of new cultures coming in that we've never seen before. And as great as change can be, we seem to, as a society, have lost the balance between building on what works and getting rid of the parts that don't without losing the soul of a community. This is why we need leaders that know how to toe that line with grace and humility. Insert Jonathan Fries, the Director of Marketing and Communications for Visit Raleigh. Everyone knows him, yet no one knows him. He's really a dark horse for this community that's really working to maintain balanced progress. A great leader sees themselves in the community that they're in. Because where your treasure is, there your heart will also be.
We're really charged across the whole organization with attracting visitors to the area, and there could be three different kinds of visitors, namely the leisure visitor, who's just here for a vacation, getaway, the business traveler who's here for a convention or meeting, and then a sports event attendee, so maybe someone who's attending, either participating in a sports event that we brought to the area, or watching a sports event that we brought to the area perhaps. And so the Director of Marketing job here is somewhat responsible for the marketing toward all three of those types of audiences.
Did you always see yourself in this position?
I didn't really. It grew on me when I first started. Out of college, I knew that I wanted to work in some kind of communications or writing field because I felt like I had writing skills to bring. I think what really pulled me into the career was that it takes a little bit of knowledge about a lot of things. So you have to know a little bit about the history of the destination that you're working with. You have to know a little bit about, as I mentioned, like photography, videography. You have to know a little bit about even like cultural anthropology almost. You have to know a little bit about cartography. I left that out earlier because I'm also in charge of proofing all the maps for the visitor maps for the county, and so you have to make sure the roads obviously are in the right places and the points of interest. I've always been a learner. I'm always like a lifelong learner kind of person. So I remember as a kid, my parents had gotten an encyclopedia because this was pre-internet days, and they had gotten an encyclopedia set, and they would just find me throughout the day, like just looking up different articles in the encyclopedia that I knew nothing about, but I was just interested in that topic, and I just wanted to get a summary of what that was. So that was probably like my strange childhood.
And I was reading where you've been the Director of Marketing Communications here for 11 years.
Yes.
And Raleigh has changed quite a bit in those 11 years. How have you noticed a shift in culture here?
I think there's been a lot of organic growth. I think there have been a lot more kind of entrepreneurs that felt like they could take a chance here and try something. And some have failed, but many have succeeded with what they were trying. I think we've grown to this sort of makers community. We've got people that are making things all the way from roasting coffee and selling locally roasted coffee to designing jeans and doing what they do at Raleigh Denim. So yeah, I think the maker culture and just that's been kind of exciting to watch, and it seems like there's a there's always this sort of smart, creative vibe that's going on throughout the city and really the county as well, because a lot of those breweries and other makers are even spread out across Wake County.
Change is just, it's not easy all the time, like kind of just watching the old kind of fade away and then watching these new ideals and these new things kind of start to come about. It's hard to adapt to sometimes. It seems like sometimes there's a push. So like how have you been able to adapt to the change?
If you're going to be a good marketing director, you have to lean into the change, and you have to be ready to change on a monthly or quarterly or yearly basis. And one example of something that we felt coming, and then we went ahead and made the change, and it's really worked out well. In about 2014, probably middle of 2015, I felt that our business was changing, and CBBs, visitors bureaus, were not being looked at as sources necessarily for listings anymore, because we were competing with Google, and we were competing with, starting to compete with, I guess, the early Siri and Alexa and so on. And so we weren't necessarily the only source in town to find out like what's happening in terms of just strictly listings of events, listings of restaurants. And so I was just feeling that the direction that we were moving in is that CBBs and their websites were becoming more like media outlets. And so almost like local media outlets, because we really needed to go into that direction of starting to break some news sometimes and tell about a new business that opened before anybody else did. And we started doing our videos in a new way to kind of have more of an emotional connection with potential visitors.
How do you create an emotional connection, and how's that helped you out so far?
I've always looked at it as like we're helping people, because we are. I think it's not just about, to me, it's not just about a transaction of money. It's really how can we almost make that person's life better. One of the new projects that we're starting on, that we've been experimenting with for a couple of years, and now we're starting on more officially, and we really just rolled it out within this past month. It's called People First Tourism. Professors at NC State that saw that tourism for some destinations was going down the wrong path, and some destinations that you've heard probably about in Europe and maybe even parts of Asia at this point are seeing over-tourism. And so the residents are not happy that they have tourism, and we're still in a good situation here where the residents actually feel like they're happy that we have tourists. I think for the most part, the way to solve that is by putting people first again, and it is giving authentic experiences of what it's like to be a local almost. What it is it could be, for example, one that we have now, it might be a farmer who has a certain plot of land, and he's working it. That's just truly his job day in and day out, but he likes to introduce the techniques of farming to new people.
Okay.
And so he'll have you to the farm, and he literally will put you to work. And it's like if he's weeding a certain patch of land, then he'll just put you to work weeding that patch of land. But while you're there with him working, you're talking about it, and you're learning how he does it and why he became a farmer, and what value he gets out of it, and how he works with local restaurants to put that food then on the table.
What do you think Raleigh represents?
There's actually 12 cities and towns,
yeah.
So Raleigh's one of 12 that I represent. So,
okay. All right.
So it's each one has its own personality too, and I think that's been really interesting. I think it does represent these innovative people, these smart and passionate people. Everywhere has people, but I think we have a special kind of people that are, they're like Raleigh smart, or they feel like they have something to give back.
What keeps you pushing sometimes when things get a little tough?
I'm growing, personally, professionally as well, and I'm becoming more of a leader, learning leadership skills as time goes by. I've got some other things to give to other people in the industry too, and so most recently I've been invited to teach some classes to people from other CBBs, and that's been very interesting, because I wouldn't have predicted that that's where I would have gone 20 years ago. I just taught my first class in July, and it was rewarding, because you learn some things while you're teaching as well.
If you could pass down anything that you've learned through your journey to help out this generation and the next generation, what would it be?
I guess what I would say in terms of what kind of advice I might pass along to a younger generation is that you're not going to have all the answers, and even the people that you look up to don't have all the answers. And just being more active in things that are going on around you. Maybe that's a little bit more of advice too. I was just reading an article again, which I read about once a week, about how people are just in their phones all the time, and people that have grew up native digital, where they're just, they've never known what it's like to disconnect. But sometimes you have to disconnect in order to have a genuine conversation and truly meet people face to face and have an exchange of ideas. So I don't know how to get to that, but I think that's another way to. It's another lesson that I feel like if I had grown up where I totally didn't know any other way other than just having my phone or having my internet with me all the time, I would want somebody to tell me that, as to just trust that you can live without it for a few hours, and you can actually have a good connection with another person, and you'll learn something.